All right, welcome again to this first event, Meeting the Governauts, an open co-programming session. This is the first event in hopefully a series where we try to establish a new branch in token engineering focusing on governance topics. You might already have seen our roadmap. And by the way, in case you contributed to our Gitcoin grant, thanks a lot. It was just amazing to see the support we gathered just from, I don't think, probably it were 8 or 9 days, and we had in total 746 contributors. So this was amazing to see, and of course encouraged us to further develop the program, to push having research groups and making progress in so many governance topics we have to explore for decentralization. And we'll discuss some of them today in this co-programming session. First, let's take a look at our roadmap. So we have 3 phases defined yet for developing the Governauts. Phase 1 is gaining community support. As mentioned, we want to become visible. We invite you to collaborate, to help shaping our program, and also to collaborate with us in doing research. And first, we are collecting issues and have first discussions, co-programming like today. Let me just check. So in case you don't want to speak at this point, please switch off your mic. Oh, wait. Do that. Okay. Let me briefly make Natalia a co-host. Maybe you can support here. Oops. All right, good. Next, phase 2, select cases and fundraising. So what we are aiming for is to conduct research groups. This is a program where we, over 3 months, work together with a core research team plus community co-researcher on solving problems. So collaborating with real DAO projects is key here, working on cases, creating tangible outcome, also to shape a picture and a mental model of what is actually token engineering for governance is phase 2. And then phase 3, growing the governance crowd. So at the moment, it's us, the ground control, as we call our team. Our core team will introduce us in a minute. But of course, it's about the whole community contributing to these efforts. All right. Next. Today, the program. First, introducing ground control. So the team initiating this in a Governauts program. Then we'll take a quick look at the Miro board for today, since this should be a co-programming, so your input is important. Then we'll provide you an overview why we see the need for Governauts, and we collected our points of view, Livy from Common Stack, from TE Commons, Jess from Gitcoin, for example, and Eugene, a whole universe of governance, people and researcher, and myself with introducing Governauts as a new branch in token engineering. And then in the second part of this event today, we'll work together on what are the most relevant challenges. And then finally, of course, how to participate and how to stay up to date. Okay, introduction round. Calling for the ground control team. Please introduce yourself. I think let's start with James here.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is James Waugh, and I work as a community manager for NEAR. And that means I'm focused on advocacy, involving the community in decision-making and empowering the overall ecosystem of communities to learn and build together. So I'm here to support, and I'm excited to continue learning from this awesome group of Governauts, and looking forward to the session.
Great. Thanks, James. I just call the next one. It's Jeff. Jeff, are you there? Probably he dropped.
No, he's there, but your sound is not working.
You're but muted.
How about now?
Now, yeah. Now
Yeah.
I'm coming. Computer. Cool.
again. Okay.
My internet isn't really working, but I think we can. If you can hear me, I'm Jeff. I'm working at the Common Stack and also with.
Oh, I think we can't hear you anymore. There seems to be something wrong with your mic. Maybe you try to sort it out in the background and Livy is taking over in the meantime.
Sure. My name is Livia, and I'm part of the Common Stack team, and I'm also leading the SoftGov and culture working group and the token engineering commons, and just really interested about culture, governance, and how can we solve some of this challenges together, and really excited about collaboration and community work. So really happy to be here today. And I'll pass back to you, Angela.
Thanks, Livy. Natalia.
Hello, I am part of the Token Engineering Academy team with partnerships and also former DAO stack. And I'm really excited to be here since governance has been part of my interests and work for almost a decade now. And it's really exciting to see and to think together about how that intersects with token engineering. So I'll pass to Renzo.
Thank you, Natalia. Hello, everybody. I'm Renzo. Nice to be here and support this opportunity to open this co-creation process and generate progress and organization through governance innovation. So my work as a UX researcher and service design makes me dive and collaborate with Common Stack to look at governance, token design, investigate front stage and backstage of the decision making process. So in the last year, I did a couple of project and workshop, and I'm here very excited to see these emerging. And I'll be here to supporting also the middle board and the discussion later. So thanks, and pass back to Angela.
Okay, we are, next is Jess. Jess.
Hey everyone, I hope you can hear me. Having a little internet issues this morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's okay-ish.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay-ish. I'm coming from an island, the beautiful island of Cortez in BC. So the internet is not super fantastic here, but I'm with the Common Stack, primarily focused on ecosystem development. I also work as a researcher and communicator with Blog Science and one of the stewards with the Token Engineering Commons. I have a background in journalism and political science, so it's funny, it's kind of coming full circle as I used to cover local, state, and national politics in the US. So yeah, it's been interesting to look at how the systems in Web3 are unfolding and how we can continue to look at decision making, the people, the processes, the tools, and the challenges that we're facing, and how we can share knowledge about all of the learnings from various communities and ecosystems, and definitely looking forward to this group to have that opportunity to digest and integrate some of the learnings and to share and create this kind of governance knowledge commons where we can all actively participate and share best practices to build better systems and communities, healthier and better, I guess, whatever that means for different people. So yeah, I'll pass back to you, Angela, if you can hear me.
Jess, thanks a lot. And maybe we let's check. Jeff, are you ready to go? Maybe in a minute. So Eugene, your turn then.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. And it's a pleasure to meet everyone. I'm really excited for today's co-programming session, generally getting to work with this community more. My background is I'm currently the head of operations at the Smart Contract Research Forum, where we're a grant-funded organization looking to connect researchers from academia and industry for the purpose of having a forum for long-tail conversation around these topics and creating more of the incentives to get researchers sharing their information out in the open. So yeah, and I come from, I was just, today's actually my last day at Carnegie Mellon, so I'm transitioning from there into fully being in the crypto and governance space. And yeah, I'm also in my bit when I'm chatting later, I'll mention some communities like MetaGov and DAO Research Cooperative and other groups that are doing some fantastic work alongside Token Engineering Commons and Common Stack. And I feel like we're all in this general camp of trying to help advance open governance research. And just given the complex nature of governance as a topic, you need a lot of different groups coming together, which is why I'm so excited to get to collaborate with all of these great folks and get to meet more and more community members so we can add more sharing and learning and the kind of events to make this information accessible and not just lost in some kind of academic journal somewhere. So yeah, super excited to be here and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Eugene. 100% agree. Now, Jeff, last chance before we move on with the program. Would be awesome if you can. Oh, yes.
Can you hear me through Jess's computer?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Jeff here from the Common Stack, Token Engineering Commons. I also do a lot of work with Block Science and all of their amazing collaborations. Yeah, really excited to be part of ground control. There's such a huge need for governance exploration and design in the Web3 space. So yeah, really excited to be here and be collaborating with such an intrepid group of cross collaborators. I think that's the way forward for this space is kind of the overlap of needs and the overlap of talents and resources of all of these groups. So really excited to be here and working with all of you. And back to you, Angela.
Jeff. Thank you. And finally, I'll introduce myself. I'm Angela, currently running TE Academy, which we kicked off last year in July, putting together the program, working with partners, working with Natalia on our next step to provide token engineering education, which is so brand new in this world. This discipline is so new, first mentioned 2018. And what we've experienced in the last couple of months is that there's huge interest from protocols and projects to collaborate with token engineers, to dig into their tokenomics, into their system design, verify system design. And as you can imagine, we have a lot of projects in DeFi working on that. But I'm in touch, of course, with the T Commons crowd and with Jess and Livy since, I guess, more than a year. And we know that token engineering for governance topics is so super relevant. Step by step, we are having more tools available. We have fleshed out processes, and I think it's just the perfect moment since we have a lot of governance tokens. We have a lot of first experiments. We also have data available now already to dig into these systems and learn more about system healthiness, power distribution. So it's everything there. Let's kick off token engineering for governance. And this is the Governauts. And I'm just excited what we are going to push forward and what we're going to create together. Now, since this is co-programming, let me quickly introduce what we want to find out and collect together today. Our question to us is, what are the issues you see in governance, you, from your perspective, from your background, being active in DAOs, or another probably educational background, area of studies, might be political science, it might be tech, it might be entirely different area. We want to know what you, from your point of view, see as the issue in governance and what we need to solve to make decentralization a reality. These two questions. And now Renzo will take you to the Miro board, our tool to collect all your challenges and your inputs today.
Yes, here we are. So I just share in the chat Probably again, Jessica did it. So you have two links, not just one, the same link anyway. So if you just open the Miro board, you will have access to the playground where, as Angela said, in the first part here, you can see, I'll bring everybody to me. So I'll wait a couple of, just a few seconds that you can join in. I want to just bring all the people to me. So if you go on co-programming governance action research, and you can see here, start here. So I can share the screen. Okay, again, so I think somebody already did it. Thank you. So if you go on start here where notes are, so the invitation here is just to, meanwhile, Livia, Jess, Eugene, Angela will speak, literally jot down your thoughts, your question, your insights. And this is just a really co-creation process. It's not here wrong or right, but if you have any questions or even insights about the topic, please feel free to just grab one of these post-it and write down your question, your notes. That's the first part. So the second one will be the discussion, but we'll get there later. So from now on, whatever you feel to share, feel free to write down. So that's going to be the task for everybody to generate discussion later. So from now on, I'll pass back to Angela and everybody will speak for 10 minutes for the topics.
Yeah. Livy, I share screen and you let me know once I should skip, or is it fine to you?
Sure. Yeah, that
Okay.
sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Good. First, Livy will provide us an overview on challenges of self-managing communities from her experience back in, I think, many projects, many months. Livy.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm very lucky to be in the token engineering community that has, and in the token engineering commons that has such a vibrant and engaged community. So it's really a great place to gather data and warm data, mostly like data that is coming from people that are participating and that have relationships with each other. So I think there are many meaningful insights that come from there. And some of the insights I'm sharing here are a mix of things that I've been perceiving and quotes of participants of the Token Engineering Commons on what are challenges of participating in self-managing communities. So I think a big one is unconditioning behavior and repatterning, because we come from systems that required a certain type of behavior for us to succeed, especially the highly competitive capitalist system. We still have a lot of behaviors that comes from this hierarchical places and people telling you what to do. So something that seemed to be a challenge for many participants is psychologically, it takes willpower to look for tasks to work on. So you finding the work, if you have all the freedom to find the work you want to do, how do you even start doing that? Taking real ownership is hard. So we talk so much about agency and ownership, but what is needed beyond the organizational level? So we can always provide practices to nurture taking agency, but it also there is a self-work that has to happen on individuals that want to take that agency to start walking that path. So we have to retrain our minds to do that. Understanding that you have agency is a challenge. So not even the take up of the agency, but just knowing that it's there available for anyone to step in. And also giving up control. And I think those two are like connected challenges, because when you give up control, people feel more free to take agency and vice versa. So it's really like unlearning hierarchical patterns to start giving up control, and then adventuring in the unknown. Also, most of the systems we're inserted in, they work a lot with the with the safety of predictability. So we know what's going to happen, and we walk a path that many people walked before. And then now walking an unknown path can bring a lot of insecurities, and might be a challenge that we can think of cultural practices to overcome. You can skip to the next slide.
Mhm.
Thank you. So funding instability. So there was a lot of feedbacks that people gave and challenges they found, and I was just trying to find buckets for what are the most common ones, or how can we group them into interesting topics that we could go deeper into research. So funding stability, so the uncertainty in the economic aspect. If I participate in a DAO, can I have what I need to survive or to succeed in my life and the things I do outside of these communities? Do proposals have to gain popularity to pass? So is this a social game in the end of the day? Is there people that have better social skills than others? And does this influence on how funding is going to be provided or not? Also, time versus compensation. So how much time do I spend for how much compensation I receive? And maybe we can start looking into compensation from more of a needs level. So what are the needs from individual people? How can we make sure that people have their needs provided? And is the time that they're spending in this systems being compensated in a way that they feel valued and cared and nurtured to continue participating in the communities? So there is a free riding problem that happens in our space, especially because there are multiple projects connected with each other, and there are some cracks in between proposals and compensation from different projects that are hard to be financed. So some people have contributions in so many aspects, but then we don't understand where funding is coming from, if they are being compensated or not, if they are doing something because they are just intrinsically motivated and they don't need the financial aspect of it. So there's a lot of conversation to be had there. And I think Jeff will talk a little bit more about the proposal inverter that adds some insights at this point. So reward mechanisms and behavior. Like reward mechanisms are a great way to start touching on some of these problems, but how do they affect behavior? We're starting to have data to analyze the impact of the reward systems we've been using, and there are really great tools out there, and we've been experimenting with them. So yeah, moving forward with understanding the reward mechanisms is really important. And then this brings the question of governance versus compensation. So governance tokens usually have a financial aspect attached to them, and how much this has been impacting the ability that people have to participate in the self-managed communities. What is the motivation they have? So this is something that we talk a lot too in our meetings from the Governauts, and probably a point that we'll expand on. And then the next slide is coordination and communication, probably the biggest challenge of all. And decentralization is governance. There's no way to decentralize without having to do the dirty work in governance. And we can decentralize or govern ourselves without coordination and wide communication. So they are probably the biggest challenges for us to solve without hierarchy. We know kind of how to do them with top-down structures, but how do we do that in flat organizations? So some of the quotes that people have is not knowing the duties or expectations I have. So how to communicate this and make sure everyone is understanding where they're stepping in, how can they collaborate? This touches on the agency topic too. And So this connects with a lack of peer reviews. Someone said, oh, we never have peer reviews. I don't know how well I'm doing or not. Is that something we could incorporate in our cultural practices? How scaling that is, how to coordinate such a thing. So also another thing is that it's very time consuming to stay up to date. So there is so much happening, and coordination and communication could probably be improved. So it's not so time consuming to stay up on decision making and how to participate. And yeah, oops, there's a double double quote there. But yeah, definitely coordinating is the biggest challenge. And then all of this touches on well-being that is not less important, because when we are in such high-speed environments and so many things are happening and we have to, it's such a complex environment. So our mind really goes to like this fractal complexity, and how can we keep ourselves healthy and making sure that we can give the best of us and think of innovative ideas while being well and being healthy. So fatigue from decision making is something people complained of, that it relates to the coordination and communication. Is it everybody that needs to make all decisions? How do we communicate? How do we even decide who are the people that need to make what decisions? Advice process kind of touches on that, but there is still room for improvement. And then the speed of change, that like, oh, maybe if I rest, I'm gonna miss out. Like, can I rest? If I stay 1 week away, maybe I'm gonna be totally lost in the space, and this generates anxiety. So having also having less physical contact is a challenge, because there's so much of our human expression that informs governance and informs communication and helps coordination, that comes from being physically together or from having like more of this touch. So it is a challenge. What types of restrictions do we have by being on a square and seeing each other from a screen most of the time? And then of course, spending disproportional time on our devices. We don't really know what is the impact of that in our health. We are like the first generation that is really having to deal with that. And then all of these things lead to frequent burnout. So this is also something we need to take care for ourselves.
Awesome,
and with
Livy.
that,
Oh,
yeah, I was gonna
Funny.
pass it back to you.
Thanks, Livy. And we are not going to dig into a discussion now, but please collect everything you have in mind, anything you want to add at the Miro board, and we'll then discuss the whole big picture together in part 2. And now we'll continue with challenges. So we are talking about bad things actually all the time. I'll hand over to Jess.
Sorry, Angela, before Jess, I want to just double check if anybody has issue to get into the Miro board. And just to let me show that everybody can have access. If you have any problem, just let me know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can see here, editor. Okay,
Oh, yeah,
no
there's a
worries.
question.
Yeah, there is a question there. I'll give you the rights right now, even though it should be open. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, let us know in the chat if you meet any issues in editing the Miro. Me too. Okay, Richard also needs access. Oh yeah, it seems that it's not open yet to, okay. Kirti, I'll share the link again. No problem.
I think I open it again, the edit, but let me know if, because before I saw people writing and it was working, but then not anymore. So.
So please try again to write, and maybe also let us know if it's okay now. Joe's, Richard, maybe you can try briefly. Eli?
Yeah, I can see more people in, and I think people are moving.
Anna Marie asking me to request editor access, and you requested.
I'm sure.
Okay, Richard says it works now. Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see. Oh, yes. I can see people right. Awesome. Thank you. So if anyone still meeting, having challenges, let us know in the chat. And
great.
in the meantime, just take notes. And obviously you do. All right, then, Jess, some more challenges. Please.
Yeah, so hey everybody, thanks again for sticking with us. And yeah, like Ange said, I'm gonna take 3 slides and just talk about and share a little bit from my lens and experience in the space, and having kind of visibility on a lot of different research initiatives going on. And then Ange is going to talk about the token engineering aspect, and then we'll jump into our session because we really want to hear from you and what you have experienced in community. So yeah, I guess there are just a couple other topics I wanted to touch on. One of them, I think maybe you've seen just with some of the dialogue around governance in Web3 and token ecosystems that many people are discussing in the frame of consensus algorithms, but there are so many more layers and levels of decision making, and it's not binary. So just looking at polycentric governance and how we can set the conditions for that to emerge. So hierarchy, you know, it's not necessarily a bad word. There are areas where we need hierarchy. There are areas where we need more flat decision making. So that is a huge, I guess, shift that we would love to discuss and bring up and kind of expand the dialogue and expanding our perceptions on how complex these systems and decision making in virtual communities really is. It's really not that simple. There's no one token that's going to solve everything for us. There's no one tool. There's no one solution. And then the second, I don't know if these are more challenges or just, you know, topics that we're discovering as we go through this work, is that there really also is a need for kind of mapping systems and processes in institutional design, which just means the rules of decision making. So that's part of the communication challenge, is just making sure that everybody has access to the rules, and also that we understand our position in the system. What does the system look like? Because a lot of times we're speaking almost different language. We have assumption around certain terms. Even the word decentralize or decentralization is, we need to unpack this. What does this mean? People have different concepts. So when you make it visual and when you draw it, people can more easily orient when they have this map or almost a compass. You know, where am I in the system? Where do I have agency? Where are the levers of decision making that I have access to? And do I have the same access as others in the system? And if not, why? And do we design our systems so that we weigh subject matter expertise differently? There are so many questions, and it's really, I think what we're discovering is it's always better to start with questions. And I think that's part of the overly simplistic mental models as well, is that I think being tech people, we're always looking at tools first. So trying to switch how we approach our governance processes and systems, and starting with questions. And then finally, I think one of the biggest challenges, or maybe rather than challenges also, we call like, you know, maybe we're all working on, is also not needing to reinvent the wheel. We've been traveling here in BC and recently met a woman who's running an eco-village here for 23 years. We're talking with a lot of communities on the ground that have been running communities and have experienced huge blow-ups in governance, like watching how humans behave, you know, and you know, stories of like how sometimes it turned cultish, or like, you know, somebody got like had a reaction to having this power on the board and their behavior, how it affected the community. So I think we have all of these research and wisdom to draw from, and having advisors, having people come in that have run communities for decades and have been doing this research. So I guess next slide. So those are, I guess, some observations to share and how we're approaching. And then I wanted to address what Livia had said and solutions, which, I don't think we use this word also of solution. It's a journey. It's not a destination. We are constantly iterating and looking at how we can integrate our learnings and how we can design or create the conditions for a healthy polycentric system. And that means different things to different communities. So Livia said about repatterning. So one of the things that was started to address this, and we have him in the room right now, is Juan Carlos has worked to found Gravity, which is a conflict transformation group, and also offers his time to speak with people in the community when issues are coming up. Also, yeah, people have trauma, especially during COVID. Do we need kind of more support within virtual communities for this? We don't have, like, with a typical job, you get benefits packages for health, mental health. There are some really cool innovators, Opolis, a name of a project that's doing like benefits co-op for digital nomads. And then funding and stability. So with the token engineering, there are developers who have been working on different mechanisms that kind of create boundaries to protect against free riding and extraction from common pool resources. And that's a lot of our work at Common Stack, and with token engineering, One Hive, several groups are working on this. I won't go into too many details, but we can talk about some of these designs later on. And then flow wallets. So Jeff has actually been working on some interesting research around how do we create more kind of abundant flows, or there's so much overhead in submitting proposals for funding to DAOs. You spend more time asking for money than you do actually doing work, and this isn't good for our systems. So I don't know if Jeff wants to mention anything about that when I finish, but there's a lot of deep work going on. I'll address the next slide. And then the last challenge, Livia, or the last two that Livia mentioned, coordination and communication. We're working on new governance tools for this, real-time signaling mechanisms that can help with the collective action problems. Also, how do we have subsidiarity, where we push the decisions to the most local points and the people affected by those decisions, so that everyone doesn't have to decide everything, consent versus consensus. And communications, I come from a communications background. We still need to work on this. It's very hard with 25 communications platforms. So how do we have better information flows, and not so that everybody has to read a 20-page forum post to understand what's going on. So this is something that probably still needs work. And then the final challenge that Livia mentioned was well-being. We've actually experimented with some like guided meditations in our virtual communities to remember that we have a body and we're not a floating head. And then we haven't yet, but there's been some discussion around like co-virtual workouts, like how can we address this, like having physical bodies in our, a lot of us are like native VR people living in a 3D world. So we have to find ways to help each other to support in this area. So the next slide, and maybe I'm going to share screen really quick to just show a couple of links. Angela, can you see my screen?
Oh, wait, I should stop if you want to share. Wait, now.
Okay. Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's see. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like this. So yeah, just, I know we're taking some time here. So there's a lot of research and development already underway. And part of what we want to do is share the deeper elements of this work, and also hear from you some of this kind of solutions or tooling that you're using to address some of these challenges. And maybe there's more challenges we're missing as well. So again, I mentioned polycentric governance, system mapping, and looking at, we were working at Block Science with the Gitcoin DAO to kind of help them to progressively decentralize. And that means figuring out like what functions that need to be fulfilled. So we did some mapping on the system. So we have some templates that we can use and share to look at how we map systems in order to better understand. And let's see, we also have been discussing maybe working on a governance audit standard that communities can use. And then our colleague Barada over at Block Science has developed this incredible computer-aided governance map, which is helping us to understand how we can use computers and data science to steer complex systems. So he created this incredible map about how we look at iterating on our governance processes. So I'll be sharing all these links before the end so that you all can access these. And then the final thing I wanted to mention is rewards and incentive systems. The Common Stack, we have a system called Praise. We recently did data analysis, and also SourceCred, Livia, and several people. It's many people that are working on these things in Token Engineering Commons that have been doing ongoing data analysis. And then it's a big assumption that we need a reward system. They want a universal basic income model, so to expect their research. And see, I'm not sure if you want to the research, if you join us for continue to join us for the research working group, because we could take hours going through all of the work that's been done and sharing the learnings so that you can then kind of maybe explore and experiment in your communities with some of these things.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Jess. And again, please capture all your comments and notes on the Miro board. And Eugene, you are next. Again, a different perspective, or probably not really different, but additional perspective, looking at the same topics. Eugene.
Yeah, thank you, Angela, and thank you, Olivia and Jess, for presenting and touching on so many of the important issues and kind of overviewing it. I really love where Olivia started on the cultural side, just because my own personal passion is very much trying to spend more time in the coming months and years exploring some of the psychology of group participation and what it takes for an individual to become to want to own their agency as much as possible, and what are some of the potential psychological conflicts that preclude people from doing that. So I very much loved hearing that note and kind of starting on that side when just kicking off some thinking about this. And for the time that I have, I'm just going to try to quickly go through kind of some of my own views of why doing this project of Governauts and kind of trying to bring together individuals both on the research and the community side is so important, and also just mentioning some other topics in addition to what Livia and Jess have mentioned in terms of just what's actively being worked on and discussed, and kind of some of the other open problem areas that are being seen in various communities. And to start with kind of the why Governauts part, I mean, coming from an academic environment, I know initially when going to get my master's and going to work at the university after, I always imagined that it's this open research focused environment. And it was just a stark reminder after 7 years in the corporate world, jumping into academia, that incentives are a powerful thing. And the unfortunate reality of incentives around research do kind of keep research in siloed and fractured environments. And the communication around research and the connection and community around research is something that can be really tough for any single individual organization to conquer on its own. Because again, with just the nature of incentives and how things work out, it's much easier to get caught in focusing on what a hyper complex topic such as governance means just in the confines of your own ecosystem, as opposed to zooming out on the broader world. And, in terms of what Jess was mentioning with not reinventing the wheel, I mean, especially for anyone who's been around, pre the last two boom cycles, I think it's very interesting to see how much conversations around governance have shifted from just being a pure consensus level question and technical question to much more acknowledging the psychology and human components of it, and to recognizing that, hey, there's a whole history of co-op knowledge that, we don't have to try to reinvent the wheel on everything. And so I think, and why I'm so excited for being part of Governauts and working with all of you wonderful folks, is to actually try to get to build more connective threads. And I think that projects like Token Engineering Commons and Common Stack One that's not represented here today, but I know I recently caught up with the folks there, is with DAO Research Cooperative. They're getting off the ground in terms of, and eventually running in a decentralized fashion. How do you run research projects that are meant for the open community and not just for a single ecosystem? And I really see the value that Governauts can add is the co-programming component, which we're getting kicked off today. And I'm very excited for getting to read the input of folks and seeing where we go from there, as well as getting some focused research projects off the ground, and really trying to connect to the other communities, whether that's, communities such as MetaGov, which is a bit academic heavy, and exploring governance beyond just cryptocurrency communities. And they're looking at governance in digital communities more broadly. There are folks there who have done research on governance in Minecraft communities and guilds there, and co-ops and all kinds of other environments that are very much not just exclusive to the crypto space. And they host seminars, they build tools. GovBase is a crowdsourced database of projects and tools in the space. They're trying to create APIs to help better connect different governance tools. And it's just great to get to be part of and work alongside these kind of communities, and to then think of how do we actually collate what we are each doing in these separate communities of trying to make sense of some of these things. And just one other community I just wanted to mention is SCRF, or Smart Contract Research Forum, where I'm working now. Because our main focus is trying to bring together researchers from industry and academia, all for the purpose of advancing more open research. And I'm very privileged to get to work there because we're in the lucky position where we have a decent amount of grant support behind us that we can play around with incentives of what does it take to get people sharing more openly, not just about the papers that got published, but how do we actually get people sharing about the problems and the things that didn't work, and the, hey, don't bother going down that road for all of these reasons kind of research. And just trying to also think through, as was being alluded, I think both by Olivia and Jess, not just about what are the structural technical components that need to change, but how do we actually intelligently factor in and start experimenting with the psychology of participation, the feeling of participation, all these other, start getting into much more open and ethereal kind of questions. And I think it's so exciting to get to be part of this community, because we can take different approaches and lenses towards these questions, because it's very easy to kind of just get caught up in what should the voting structure be, or what are the policies and procedures that should be. But as was alluded to by kind of everyone who's spoken so far, we kind of also have to come back to basics, because right now, there's a lot of use of the terminology of DAOs and becoming decentralized, and there aren't good agreed upon set definitions of, well, what does it mean to decentralize? How do we measure decentralization? How do we really understand where you are in the process of truly decentralizing? And I think we can all probably think of some examples where ecosystems that claim decentralization, and then you see a thorny governance question and you realize the power concentration of decision-making power is still kind of captured by a few stakeholders or a few stakeholder groups. And how do we actually assess and map this, especially in the context of reality of getting certain projects off the ground and getting them funded? And similarly with autonomy, as was mentioned, right? How do we define and measure autonomy? What does this mean? What are the actual pressures that exist around a question such as autonomy? And I think it's just so interesting to think about what this means for things like scalability of DAOs. And one of the podcast episodes that I dropped from what Bitcoin did, and people might have different opinions about the podcast overall, but I thought that episode was particularly very interesting with Eric Voorhees and Shapeshift, and talking very openly about them using decentralization as a tool to avoid regulatory oversight. And some people are doing the dexiting, as my colleague Richard Brown has called it, or the exiting to DAO. Some people are doing it for regulatory arbitrage reasons of, hey, we just want to offload that responsibility. And in my mind, on the other end of the spectrum, there's a lot of groups doing it for the genuine benefits of decentralization in terms of creating resilient systems that really are inclusive and co-owned, the idea of bringing cooperatives in the form of DAOs into the crypto space. And how do we really give people the opportunity for as much autonomy and agency as possible, which then opens us back up to the question of, well, what's the personal change? What's the individual level change? What's the, reshaping our relationship with our ego, our thoughts of control, our the question of participating in a community and how that affects my own identity formation and things like that. I think it opens the door to a lot of questions that, a few years ago were not really being actively explored outside of pockets of communities that are just super interested in these kinds of topics. And now that we see, I think I saw a quote as of mid to late June, there's over 100 plus DAOs with a total of over 10 billion, billion with a B dollars in terms of money being managed. And now all of a sudden everyone realizes that the culture, the psychology, all these other questions are so important, because that's actually going to be the testing ground for, well, are these scalable? How are we actually interacting with these systems in the first place? How do you create that healthy culture, especially when the unfortunate reality for a lot of ecosystems has been kind of copy pasting governance, and they might not have the resources or the folks on hand who can help them customize that for their ecosystem. And, what are the kind of open standards and ideas that can be shared to make that process easier for anyone trying to actually structure a DAO. So I think there's this kind of very interesting elements where we're both defining first principles and the basic terms, as well as trying to think through the complexity and mapping it simultaneously. And all of this is happening as there are a ton of communities, either exiting to DAO or new projects are launching DAO first. And that's its own discussion of, what's better for a sustainable community, DAO first or exiting to DAO? What does the initial token distribution look like and the governance that gets related to that? How does the treasury get managed? What are the incentives that need to be in place to make this all sustainable for individuals? So I'm super excited to get to the co-programming session. So I'm going to stop rambling at this point. But yeah, I'm super excited to get to meet more folks and to collaborate and see what kind of ideas we can all come up with and work on and hopefully help advance together. So thank you for the time.
All right, Eugene, thanks for this pledge of not focusing on tech only. I just wanted to check. There are some messages in the chat. All fine with the Miro board or still struggles, Livy?
I think all access that were requested were given.
Okay, good. All right. Then, before we start to explore this Miro board, I want to provide you some final words on now what about token engineering here? Why do we think we want to create a certain branch in token engineering? Why is this relevant? And let me switch on my slides again. Okay. Can you see it again? All right, good. So why do we need engineering in governance? I'd like to now walk you briefly by example of builder rewards to make it more tangible. Walk you briefly through system design, interconnectedness of subsystems, and governance as an evolution of systems to give you some more insights on, okay, token engineering for governance, how does this look like? Builder rewards. So you might have heard about tools like SourceCred, Coordinate, Praise, and more. So these are tools to help track contributions for builders of a system. And of course, there are two motivations to create builder rewards. First, builder rewards are a way to reward builders for builders in order to attract builders, building the functionality, the features, the applications on top of a protocol, for example. And in order to compensate them for time and skills and for sustainable engagement, that is so relevant and important. It's critical for any ecosystem, crypto ecosystem. And in an open source world, as Livy met out so nicely, we replace the concept of an employee. So anyone is eligible to contribute, and you are free to opt in and opt out at any time. All that matters is valuable contributions. Now, what also matters is decision-making power in any cryptoeconomic decentralized system. And that's why builder rewards second are connected with governance. So typically crypto ecosystems are owned and governed by its stakeholders. So we have a lot of governance tokens out there, and the main utility of this token is taking part in decision-making processes and having a say in the network, and thus holding decision-making power as a capital asset. And there are several types of stakeholders in any crypto system. We have the users, we have investors, and we certainly have builders. And they make the system, again, the builders make the system valuable because they build functionality and token utility. So you want to give these builders a voice to steer and further develop your ecosystem. And you want them to take part in decision-making. And this decision-making power in many ecosystems, in many DAOs we see today, comes in form of tokens. So these are the two layers of builder rewards. Now, looking at potentially as a token engineer, there's an echo in the call. I don't know, can you make sure that mics are switched off? Thanks. Now, to improve builder rewards or to design builder rewards, a token engineer would go through these steps. So first, you would look at the objective, the system purpose. So we collected some, encourage and reward builders for valuable contributions. That sounds simple, can be hard, particularly when it comes to defining KPIs. And here, looking at performance indicators. So does this system provide the results we are aiming for? What metric could help us understand? This is the first element. Then, of course, you have to take a look at the stakeholders, many stakeholders. Here we focus on the builders. We define the interaction. In a builder reward system, we might have the steps register a contribution, whatever it might be. It can be coding, it can be communications, it can be dispute resolution, it can be building up a tool, it can be infrastructure, can be also data analysis. So register these contributions. Then a second step might be rate or weight a contribution, meaning you assign a value to it and you transfer a token as a compensation or to step-by-step distribute decision-making power. And next step would be you define the invariant properties of such a system. Now, how can this look like? So the invariant properties are properties that should hold in any circumstances. For example, we have a limited pool of tokens for builder rewards. However, rewards should never go to zero. So you should always receive builder rewards, but since a token pool would always be limited, the rewards, as a result, the more builders you have in the system, the smaller your reward will be for the same kind of a task. And this might result then in a curve design tied to contributions registered. And designing these invariant properties then lead to mechanism design. And in mechanism design, you first design the interactions, so what you can do in the system and how you can do it. And at this point, you ignore human behavior. Just look at okay, what are interactions? How can they take place? Again, an example in builder rewards. Mechanism design can look like any contribution that is registered is eligible for receiving tokens. First paradigm. Second, any contribution type, no matter if we talk about coding, communications, infrastructure, any contribution type is equal to the system. So there is no predefined value. Next one. the value is solely defined by a human actor assigning a value. This is some element, for example, that we've been exploring heavily in praise and comments. So how to define the value of a contribution, and we went for a very subjective value appreciation. And so value is solely defined by a human actor assigning the value, and then you would have, you can also define it or expand it to value and valuation of a contribution as an emerging property, like in source cred. And this how is usually defined by certain parameters. So the most obvious one would be the weight of a contribution. But additionally, we can use another parameter, which could be credibility of the registrant, so that we not only have the contribution itself defining the value, but also the credibility of somebody assigning value to it. Could be also a parameter to define value, right? And setting these parameters, you can imagine, has a huge impact on how such a system would evolve over time. And finally, and only finally, because sometimes I feel in governance, incentives are such a huge topic, but it's only the very top layer of the system design. Finally, we come to incentives, and you use incentives to optimize towards a particular goal. Now, we know our goal is, in our example, builder rewards, that a valuable contribution receives tokens. That's fine. But we also know that this step of subjectively assigning a value is critical for defining the value in the system over time. So we can think of not only the contributor, the builder, receiving a reward. Of course, a next step could be looking at the registrant assigning a value to it, also gets a reward. And here it's interesting, of course, because how to ascertain neutral and reliable assessment of a value, particularly if you can earn a reward. And is it a monetary reward or is it a different kind of a reward? And this is all these questions are falling under section incentive design. How to optimize towards a certain outcome. Another important element in token engineering is interconnectedness and looking at the various subsystems or external systems that are relevant for our token design. So for any task challenge in token engineering, we have to map out and make sure that we have the full picture of all the interconnected systems that are involved, because we can always only assess the system as a whole and cannot break it down in pieces and just ignore the rest and look at the single system. When it comes to builder rewards, we might have the reward system as discussed, but then there are external systems like token markets and a token price. Sure, this has an impact. This has an impact on the system and the behavior. Imagine what a token price that skyrockets does to the number of contributors and contributions, right? Another system that we have to take into account in our example of builder rewards is governance and decision-making. This is also a system, how decision-making is shaped with all the elements discussed beforehand, the invariant properties of the system, the mechanism design, the incentives, and then the distribution of decision-making power. And if the decision-making power in your system is tied to tokens, to the same tokens as your reward system, or if there's any relationship between these tokens, our reward system will result and having an impact in the decision-making system. And here you might want to balance, for example, decision-making power, the distribution of decision-making power between the investors that perhaps first came into the system, buying a token, and second, the builders who earn the token via contributions. And you might want to design a shift in governance power. This is another relation and interconnectedness of reward system with a decision-making system. So you see, you can't design governance systems on a white sheet of paper. These systems are interconnected. You can't disentangle the components and look at just one component in isolation. These systems are dynamic, they evolve over time, and we have the human in the loop. And this is a reason why we need a detailed understanding of such system. This is an image of actually a session yesterday at TE Academy Hydra DX, where Chris Block Science just mapped out the interconnectedness of the core stocks and interactions in a typical AMM. So we have to have this detailed understanding of the dynamics in such a system. And then, and only then, we can start to actually sufficiently govern our system. Because what is governance for decentralized systems? It's you update and optimize your systems. Systems are evolving and need to adapt to new needs, need to optimize. And in order to do that, you have to take informed decisions. So you need to understand your system, to assess the risks, to assess negative side effects or sensitivities, and ultimately keep them robust and safe and fair and meeting the system's purpose. And so this is what, if we're talking about the research group, this is what we have in mind with the Governauts research group. So we want to match the engineers in our community with governance researchers to bring the topics and the skills together in order to apply token engineering methods to the challenges here, to really understand the system design, the dynamics, the interconnectedness, and start to come up with new ideas and also verify these new ideas. And here, this is a screenshot from a questionnaire. I'll share the link in the chat. Here you can pre-register, and as soon as we open up applications for the research group, we'll let you know, just for your information. Okay, that's it from my side. And I think now we are ready to go to the Miro board and take a look at the challenges you've collected there.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everybody, to share your background. So I'm going to share my screen just to show you what I will ask to do. So I suppose you see my screen. So at the moment we have, thanks to everybody to share their own input inside here. So for the next probably 30, 40 minutes, we have quite a few inputs. So each of us want to present and share your question inside. You can just take and drag your post-it and place it here, just where there is this governance buckets. Let's say, pick this one, and I will read it out, and I will ask anybody who talk to just in 1 minute, present your insights, share who you are, where the question comes from, is linked with the project, with an idea, and then we can discuss for the next 5 minutes. So I'm conscious of time. I will make sure there is, for each of us, just the right amount of time, so 5 minutes. So I will start reading out, how do we deal with communities with constantly changing culture and demographics? So please, who wrote this post-it, introduce yourself and tell us more about this.
Who should start?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's me. My name is Nathan. I'm a steward at the Token Engineering Commons and doing case studies with Common Stack. So this post-it is really just understanding how living communities kind of evolve over time and how we deal with changing demographics within certain communities, where participants can come and go at their own volition. And when that happens, you constantly change the dynamics of a community and how we deal with that over time, and how communities evolve. It's really a big question that I've always had at the heart of what we're trying to accomplish, because there's always going to be new participants coming in and people leaving and moving into new DAOs. And so I think it's a fundamental problem that we have within DAOs that people don't really acknowledge as much as they should. Yeah, just want to throw that out there.
Thank you, Nathan. So I suppose maybe Livia is the best person to just start probably giving feedback on this question. And of course, any of us want to comment on this input from Nathan, just please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. I think it made me think of something I learned in game design, that the best game is the one that you can enter and exit as equally easy. So I think with maybe changing the demographics of a community, it happens like slowly through time. And this is really a challenge of the tokens that hold governance and financial and have the financial aspect to it. Because what if a person is not interested in the project anymore, but continues to want holding to the financial power of it and doesn't participate in governance anymore? So I think this is something to consider when like changing the group that is mostly active in decision making and engaged with the community versus the people that are there just for the financial incentives.
Thank you, Livia. And Nathan, just I would like to ask you if you have any specific example or anything that comes to your mind as a response to what Livia was sharing.
Yeah. So I think that when I look at my participation in DAOs, whether it be like in a specific working group or within a certain team that you're working on, you know, the introduction of a single individual has dramatic impact on how you interact with your colleagues and people that you work with on a daily basis. And a lot of times it's a good thing. A lot of times it could be a bad thing. But it just, you know, understanding from an individual perspective how to deal with those changes is something that I think needs, you know, a little bit of a spotlight. Something to just say, hey, this is what happens when, you know, a new person interacts with you. How do you set your expectations within your own group? How do you maintain the culture that you've worked so hard to build over the past, you know, X amount of time? Because, you know, they'll come in and they may be really aggressive and really, you know, excited about doing it, but you have to learn how to guide that. So there's like these little aspects of public management almost that you have to really address when you're being a participant within a DAO. And so those are the aspects that really just, yeah, they get my mind going. So thank you.
Thanks a lot. I think it is one of the aspects definitely we want to develop also in the research group, and it's a great opportunity to really gauge which one is really more relevant for the community. So thanks, Nada, for this. I would like again to invite anyone else who just want to bring one post-it in the governance bucket. So I did one first myself. So I really encourage you to bring one in, introduce yourself, and tell us the context of the question so we can have more understanding of how we can address your question. So I'm seeing here post-it moving. So let's say Juan Carlos, just I want to see here this 5 historical inequalities. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us more about your input?
Yes, hello everyone. This is a thought that I have around the governance and the future of governance, and is that sometimes we are building tools, but the tools we build leverage or encourage inequalities, and like they make bigger the gaps and between people in. And for me, it's very important to, when we think in decentralized governance, to also think in fighting historical inequalities. And I mean with that, inequalities around gender, inequalities around geopolitical matters, inequalities around race, inequalities around access to information. And yeah, I think that this is something of evaluating and knowing the shadows of the light we are trying to create with the tools we build. Because yeah, we are iterating and making tools, but we are like making we don't know the consequences of the tools, and sometimes, yeah, we can have like a more long-term scope and a long-term vision of what is the humanity we want to build, because yeah, maybe we are creating tools because we think in the short term they will help to assess certain issues. But I think that for the long scope of what is the humanity we want to build, we still need to fight and to use this decentralized governance and all these projects to promote a more equal humanity and inclusive for everyone.
Thank you, Juan. Yeah, I guess it's a very another quite wide topic in terms of understand how to decide what to decide and what the consequences. Again, I think we are still in the domain from Livia or anyone else here from who presented before, or want to jump in to give maybe an example of how these historical inequalities could be addressed.
I think Jess touched on this. I would love to hear from her.
I'm actually really feeling like I want to hear from more people in the session. So I'm going to defer. I'm going to pass the mic to whoever feels strongly to speak, because I would love to hear more voices on this.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
I guess kind of like maybe if anyone has experienced a particular example of a community that you're in that you're willing to share, that could be interesting just to hear some of your experience and how you see this unfolding in the space.
Yeah. I think that was, I think my intent also to ask a clear example that we could then narrow down to a context. From Johan or anyone else in the community that feels related to this question.
I saw Vikrant. He unmuted.
Hey there. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, my name is Vikrant Patankar, and I'm from Mumbai, India. And speaking of like discrimination and stuff like that, like it's been in the form of like I don't know how you all can relate or find it familiar, but in India it's quite like common that people are discriminated on the basis of caste, and caste system has been in India for like centuries, and we haven't yet like solved it in a very complete manner. Like in the past 100 years, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar had done wrote the Constitution of India, where like he had wrote like number of governance rules that provided benefits, extra benefits, and reservations for these marginalized communities. But such kind of things cannot be seen in the digital space, especially in a decentralized manner. And I don't know like how the future is gonna like try to fix this governance issue on a digital scale, basically. And I just wanted to explore more solutions to that. Yeah, that's one of the examples like we can like work on, I guess.
Thank you, Vikrant. I think it's clear context. Probably, Jess, would you like maybe to give a feedback on this context, or Livia, or are we going to stay?
Yeah, I guess I'll just comment because I had a thought come to mind when Vikrant was speaking. Yeah, I guess there's a lot of just embedded inequities in many systems. So I've traveled around the world. Right now I'm in Canada, and there's still such an incredible, crazy, issues with First Nations and Indigenous peoples around the world. And I've been thinking a lot about my own, like we have a member of our group at Governauts who's in the Token Engineering Commons, and he has a talk, like a 2-hour workshop that he gives on decolonializing yourself. And I think about this a lot with token engineering and systems design, and how our assumptions and all of these things like digital colonialism, and how we impose solutions on community rather than maybe having stakeholders who are involved. So for example, a personal experience is, that I've seen in this space is like having someone design a reward and incentive system that doesn't necessarily need money, like that they have like enough wealth that they don't have to worry, but they're designing a system for people who have a different mental model, or like different, thing, like they still have not transcended money. Maybe some people in this space, are like crypto rich, they've transcended money, amazing. And then are those the people that should be kind of top down designing reward systems for people who are like, still need paycheck to paycheck or whatever? So I think just having this like a little bit of awareness, at least, because it's hard to, like we're talking about, like deprogram, but just having awareness of some of these issues is really important. I know, Vikrant, that's a little bit off topic, but I think it speaks to what you're saying. And like, yeah, these embedded systems that have been, in your country for, hundreds of years, and how do we ensure that we're not programming some of these biases into the systems, as Angela was kind of like alluding to with the interconnectedness.
Thank you, Jess. I think as I'm caution time, I just want to give the chance to others to share. I think I saw Anne-Marie posted one interesting input about the more a member contributes equal more vote weights. And this directs governance power into the direction of those with the time and ability to contribute to communities. So Anne-Marie, would you like to just introduce yourself and tell us more about it?
Sure, thank you. Yes, I'm Anna Marie. I'm a contributor with both the TC and Common Stack, and I'm also DAOs Experience Facilitator. It's something that I have been pondering and concerns me, is that of my experience in DAOs, which is fairly new, I've probably been in the DAO space for about 4 months, is noticing how when the system is that the vote weight grows in relation to how much input someone puts into the community, or the value they're seen to input, I think these creates incredible barriers. Often, it brings up that question for me about, should the people that have are in the position in their life that they have more time or access, or whatever that reason is that they're able to interact with a community more and contribute, should that mean they have more voting weight? Is that the right way for votes to be decided? What about the person that might only be able to contribute an hour, but they've got an incredible wealth of knowledge and experience and information at their hands, but their weighting vote is very low? So yeah, that's just something that I've been pondering a lot. And I find a very interesting question.
Thank you. Yes, I think it encompasses quite a few sides of the community contribution, how this would affect governance power. Just maybe would like to engage Also, Eugene, if you have any input on this topic, just to give a diversity of views about this area, or Angela as well, of course, just to hear from any of the governance for our research group.
Yeah, I'm happy to quickly comment. I mean, I very much love that question that you just posed, Anna Marie, because I think it's, I mean, I know in my own desire to plug into certain ecosystems, it just feels prohibitive if I don't have the time necessary to pour over all of the documentation and catch up on all the chats. And how does that mean I'm just excluded from potentially getting to a point where I can participate if I don't have 10, 15, 20 hours a week to dedicate? And I think it's a really interesting design challenge. And I hope that there's more work with UI, UX folks and system design and interaction design people to actually play around with what are the forms of visualizing and creating community onboarding that I, as a newcomer to the ecosystem, can get caught up in 30 minutes or whatever is a reasonable amount of time, so that I can intelligently contribute to the thoughts and discussions that are happening. And yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know. I have mixed opinions on how much that exists, the current challenges around it exist due to not having good, clear options of how to overcome that problem, versus how much of it is a fundamental, you need a bare minimum input of information before you can meaningfully contribute. And what is that metric in a community of what is the bare minimum amount of information that I need to be able to contribute to decision making? And that could change tremendously between communities, depending on how complex, how wide ranging the decisions are. You know, if it's in a community where it's a very binary technical of like, do we want this to go up or down? And that's it, that, you know, that can be much more straightforward when we're co-designing, co-developing systems to be as inclusive as possible. And I mean, just whenever you allow for the full complexity of humanity to be factored in, that just creates so many things that you can't possibly map ahead of time. And part of why I get so excited around these discussions is, you know, we're talking about functional ways to map and deal with human uncertainty, and that is its own kind of super complex thing. But yeah, in fear of going off on a total ramble, I think adding the kind of, and going back to the previous questions we were talking about with the ethics and inequality, I think trying to link a lot of these things together and honestly explore them, and being willing to share about places where you think like communities might have had missteps, and having honest discussions about it, as opposed to just trying to blame or congratulate if we think someone is doing poorly or well. I think we're at a time where we just need as much open discussion around this to hopefully come up with the best possible solutions to make those kind of problems as minimized as possible. I don't know if it's possible to get rid of them, but at least to minimize the burden on individuals who want to contribute and make it as inclusive as possible in that sense.
Thanks, Eugene. Yeah, I think it's very interesting how we can consider ethics or you know, inequalities as measurements to understand how we want to create community contribution and design then governance around those values. So I think I'm gonna just again to have more diversity on questions. There is one very interesting I will read out, and I will ask to present yourself, is how to determine major reputation of people across decentralized systems. So who wrote this post? Could you?
Actually, this is Vikrant again. Yeah, hello.
Hey, Vikrant.
Yeah. So again, like I'm Vikrant from Mumbai. Actually, I'm a product designer and working with DeepWorks Studio, and we are working on this project called as Skill Attestation System, wherein we are trying to like pick out the qualities of our design DeepWorks Studio and trying to create a template for other organizations so that they can follow the same method. So basically what we do is we get collaborators or freelancers who are looking for jobs, and we have some experts in our team who collaborate with those freelancers on project basis, and this way the collaborator also gets the experience, and the expert also gets some help in working on certain projects. So this is a project in which James is also involved, James Waugh, I guess. Yeah. So this question is basically related to the reputation system that we are trying to build. Like, what is that main factor that is going to determine which person or which candidate or is better at their own skill? Like skills, what they do, what happens is that skills degrade. What happens is skills degrade over time. Okay, so not degrade exactly, but what happens is that it doesn't really like. Just wait a second.
Yeah, probably Vikrant,
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry for the delay. So basically the doubt is like what the problem is we are trying to solve is we are trying to like build a governance system that can basically determine the reputation of people and build a transparency between them, and like what are the methods by which we can transfer their reputation over networks and different decentralized systems, so that other organizations can also recognize their skills and something like that. So yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, definitely. Very deep question. I think here probably I think I would like to ask maybe Angela. We haven't heard from you yet, and plus I would like again to extend even to other people that I know that you're writing in the chat, but feel free also to jump in the conversation. It's a very open dialogue where we can learn from each other, understand the direction. So coming back to the question, so Angela, would you like to just to give for the input on what Vikrant said?
I mean, I really like all the, I started with builder rewards, and reputation is for me an element of a reward, isn't it? So for me, it's not only about monetary compensation rewards, it's also about reputation, credibility. And since it feels, I've seen some notes on the Miro board on, okay, localize, having sub-communities in DAO. At the moment, I see a lot of activities towards, does it really make sense to build this huge thing, since there are since we experience in every single team a different culture and different needs. And I think then having transferable elements like transferable reputation, transferable credibility, or skill certification, of course, is a very interesting topic.
Well, not exactly transferable, but making it accessible to every other organization that is looking for such kind of people with such kind of real skills. Because what happens these days is that resumes can be faked, and people can build fake portfolios to get into a company to work. So what is like how we can and especially in a decentralized environment, like we were also thinking about giving the users or the freelancers NFT badges so that they can be verifiable, stuff like that. But again, the question comes down to the fundamental thing that like how are we going to make this work? So yeah, it's a pretty deep and pretty complex thing actually, but it's really fascinating to me. Yeah.
Totally.
Thanks, Vikrant. So I guess here we can just maybe shift a little bit the focus, not just on the community contribution, but maybe going towards something about the DAOs. So I already hear this post about creating guilds of people solving the same problems across DAOs. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us more about yourself in 1 minute, and then we can discuss about it.
Yeah, hey everyone, it's Eli here. I was doing some work on SourceGrid, so I've thought a lot about figuring out how to flow value in communities. And right now I've been working on Kraus House, which is a DAO which is trying to buy and manage an NBA team. And what I've noticed is that, we're all trying to solve the same problems in all these little silos. And it feels like there's this really, there's not a strong sense of evolution and growth, like when all this is siloed. So I'd love to see, sort of horizontal connection between these DAOs, with people working on the same problem. So like take onboarding. We're all working on onboarding just in different ways. So I'd love to see that sort of cross-pollination. But I also wanted to add it, I was interested in what Vikrant was saying early on about the caste system and sort of decolonializing the mind. And I think part of that is sort of encouraging a more permissionless attitude in practice when it comes to like tooling. So like, what does permissionlessness actually mean? So like, for example, last week I was working in a DAO and I felt like it was a bit centralized, the way they were sort of trying to meter out like tokens based on the work. So I just said, cool, like let me create my own token, give some to everyone and let them start flowing it, right? And like it'll work or it won't, but it's a very grassroots approach. And I think that the more we see that, we won't have to worry about these, perfect top-down systems that take, a year plus to design perfectly.
Thank you. Very interesting approach and incentive. There is anybody from the community, not just from the speaker, that want to that feels to connect what Ellie said or want to bring something different about the topic?
Yeah, I just want to say that it's Nathan here. That I really agree with the idea of like, the isolated silos of trying to solve these problems. Because I do see it in a lot of DAOs where they're trying to solve the same thing. And Anna Marie and I had talked about this in the token engineering comments about kind of evolving our working groups into these kind of DAO services almost, where we can kind of concentrate these efforts and create these new governance primitives and allow them to be shared and collaborate with across multiple DAOs. I do think that's a really, really important step that we can make within the DAO community and allow for people to really share best practices across multiple DAO systems. So
I'd like to briefly react on what Eli was stating, because in a way you said, okay, why do we put such a lot of efforts and try to come up with a perfect system design? Why don't we just launch a token and see what happens? And I would react on that like, okay, there is no design. You always design, you always make choices, whether you just launch a token or whether you think about a complex system first. So there is no escape from accountability or responsibility for a token design. Second, I like an approach where you'd go for small iterations. Why do we have huge systems today? I think this is probably rather because there is the opportunity in launching a token for a whole network, mainly to collect funds, right? This has been the main driver for creating a huge system and not going step by step, starting with 3 people and then grow. But of course, it's valid to discuss, can we take an entirely different approach and grow it from bottom up? But perhaps you see there might be various motivations to be taken into account. But starting small and then work iteratively is viable. And then governance plays a huge role, because then you're talking about iterations, about adapting, make your system flexible, make your system adaptive, improve it step by step, and then how to improve it if we talk about decentralized system. So I think in general, you can't get rid of these important questions. It's rather you are more flexible with tiny systems. This is, in a nutshell, my message.
Nice. Thank you, Angela. I think we have time for another couple of questions. I'm conscious time to just want to give you also a chance to give links for our next steps. Also want to make you aware that we will share and disseminate what we do this together. So I give even from the, I'm just would like to get one from the notes here on top. There is one interesting again from DAOs topics that avoiding monopolistic tyrannical culture in DAOs that doesn't evolve. Is anyone who wrote this, would you like to share? I will just drag and drop and present. Otherwise, we can just go on the next one. So if not, I will just go to the next one. This one is how not to reprogram biases in system design. And can please, who wrote this post to just share more about this?
Well, that was just me making a note of something that was mentioned by Vikrant, and then Jess commented on it. So how could we, yeah, how do we bring diversity? And I think that's another point of like, are we truly welcoming for people of multiple backgrounds, even like further than the ones we have here, multiple social conditions, and also language might be a barrier. Like, is there any point that we're gonna stop speaking English, or that's just it's gonna go forever and all the DAOs are just gonna be in English? Or like, what is needed to start bringing, like, exchanging knowledge with people from other places, other language backgrounds too.
Thanks, Livia. And yeah, so as Livia shared this, there is any feedback from the audience, from anyone else who want to build up or want Livia shared? If not, then we can move to just this one. It might be kind of related. It says, how do we ensure latecomers to a DAO still have a say? And
yes, that's my one.
Thank you, Richard. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us more about this? Thanks.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Richard. I've been working in the Ocean DAO for a few months now, like 3 or 4 months, I'd say. I'm a data scientist. I work as a machine learning engineer. And first of all, thanks for this meeting. It's been amazing. This has been one of the best Zoom sessions I've joined in. It's kind of blown my mind. But yeah, so this is kind of there's always different stakeholders in an ecosystem with kind of different backgrounds. And I think some of those stakeholders might come at different stages. So for example, if you want to build the DAO at the protocol level, you have these kind of crypto engineers, for example, but they're designing this ecosystem for another type of person. So maybe that's like a data scientist or a physiotherapist or something like that. So by the time the kind of later stakeholders get in, maybe the token has increased in value, and this newcomer doesn't have as much governance rights, for example. And because all of these DAOs are kind of built by, blockchain engineers and stuff like that, does that mean that the blockchain engineers are always going to have the most governance rights in every ecosystem? And how do we kind of address this issue?
Thank you. Very up to the point question. So I think that open here to the panelists, because I think it's each of you could maybe contribute to this question about.
Good observation.
Maybe I would like to ask if I think if Jeff is here, is still with a good connection, I'd like maybe to share, ask him to share if there is any experience about what Richard just mentioned.
He had to go, he's working on the new token model for Holochain right now. Okay. So yeah.
Maybe you can jump in, Jess, or
Yeah, I have a response here.
Go for it, Eli.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like to some degree, there's no such, I was talking to Angela about this earlier, like there's no such thing as an immutable code. Like we have to believe in it, right? So like we might have this DAO where all the engineers are getting all this early stage sort of like DAO equity and governance power. But at the end of the day, like they need other people. And when those people come along, like they have leverage. So it might be like, hey, this arrangement doesn't work for us. You know, let's do something else. You know, let's change how this DAO is structured. So there's always an ability to fork and pivot. You know, like it's like the more we believe in this code is immutable, the more we're slave to it. So I think there's a lot of potential there. It's just a mindset thing.
But still
I
an
think that-
interesting, oh, sorry, just one tiny remark. Interesting research question I see is token distribution, initial token distribution, what this does to the power distribution long term. Because there is, and well, there are some cases where you can observe that an initial distribution of wealth and money is really hard to change because of the incumbents in the system being opposed to any change, of course. And I think, sure, we can fork. Sure, I totally want to support this. No system is immutable. It's just a matter of trust. We can opt out. Still, I think it's a relevant question to explore. Initial token distribution and long-term distribution of power.
Yeah, and I think that also brings up the interesting question of, you know, does that mean sort of one exaggerated interpretation of what you mentioned, Eli, is, you know, that means token distribution design can actually promote hypersplintering in the sense that you always just want to break out, start new, and just keep breaking out and starting new. And does that limit the efficacy of certain DAOs in accomplishing their missions? And another angle of looking at it is kind of what Angela was just alluding to, how much of this requires innovation on the initial token distribution models. And I think a third question coming back to the whole culture side of it is this an actual system design problem in the sense of what is the actual way that you create it, and like reverse vesting schedules, or actually people a year, 2 years, 3 years into the system are the ones who are getting rewarded? Or is it a question of cultural design and creating the cultural norm of, hey, just because I was the engineer, that just means I have the chance to airdrop money on new community members who come in and give them more decision power. And I don't know if it's a mechanical level design question, or is it the human cultural design question? I imagine it'll fall a little column A, little column B, but I hope to see experimentation on both sides. If anyone knows of any particular communities who've tried stuff like that, would love to hear about it.
Yeah, just quickly on that point, in the Token Engineering Commons, we've been taking a very active stance against technocracy. So what does it mean to involve like the general community in decisions that are usually taken by developers, or even like the economic design or the DAO design, or like a lot of things that are usually like done by a few people without the inputs of anyone else, because they have the expertise for that matter. But then can't we educate the community on like sharing those expertises and what types of inputs people might have from their very like social and cultural perspectives that would make that even more robust than if just a few people had decided on that. So now we had an initial token distribution of just for the builders, and we still don't know the final number for everyone that participated in the initial token distribution, but for the builders was around 300 people. So it's a very large distribution considering other projects that might do this just for the core team. So it's like 5 or 6 people. So I guess we'll understand the impact of this later when we can analyze the data.
And if I can just comment 2 points, and then I'm aware we only have 7 minutes left at the top of the hour. But on the point of technocracy, just 2 points. I've been thinking about this a lot as well, Olivia, is like the first part is even having a computer, we kind of, it's hard to, like, that's already technocratic. And that Regen Network actually has an interesting governance model called the community staking DAOs. And the Common Stack is going to be experimenting as stewarding the first one, but and hoping to like connect the threads between developers who know how to run a node on a network and maybe land stewards or scientists. So how do we give land stewards governance on this network if they don't have the same technical knowledge? So they have an interesting model that they're kind of developing on. And the second part about technocracy as well is I was having a conversation with Dr. Michael Zargam at Block Science the other day, and there's the flip side of that is, when you walk across a bridge, do you expect to have a say in which bolts that they choose or at what angle they build the bridge? There is also this line of like that we have subject matter experts for a reason, and particularly engineers, and there should be opportunities that we educate people, but it's also, there's like this overhead of trying to like fully educate somebody on a subject that takes years to understand. And I think that goes along with like this kind of lack of reputation and ID systems that some people have brought up, and why we need to have some kind of like reputation systems or certification. I know Angela has been, and Deep Work as well, Andre with Deep Work has been looking at how do we certify like education or attest to reputation in these communities as well. So just a few thoughts. Lots to discuss and surface in the collective intelligence, and hearing from everybody and all the facets of some of these topics.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks everyone. I think we are in perfect time to ask if there is any very last question about that we want to address. I think we have just very few minutes before we want to give more direction for next steps. So I'm calling out just the last invitation if anyone won't have one more space to one more last question. If not, then I think I will just pass to Angela to finish off with what we can carry on later in the near future. And I want to say thank you very much for all the insights, all the questions, all the conversation engagement. We are very, very excited about what we shared today. So thank you again, and I pass to Angela.
And I pass to James, because there's the last round, how to stay up to date, our channels and next steps. James, are you still there?
So I'm really thrilled with all of this discussion, and I can't wait to keep it going. Join us in the Telegram group or on Twitter in a more public forum. And we've been experimenting with a lot of ways to reward contributions to the primary directive, which is research output, leading to the 3-month research initiative, which should culminate in the sharing of a bunch of knowledge. So we're excited to continue building this community around the sharing of that knowledge, but also increasing the accessibility of that knowledge. And I think that's the challenge we're up against, kind of maintaining that connection between all of these different research projects and learning from each other along the way. So I'm hoping to continue doing these open co-programming sessions and other workshops and events leading to the big event starting in October. And if you have any questions, you know where to find us. We just shared the links, and there's all kinds of opportunities. So if you have an idea for another project or initiative within our commons of commonses, and looking ahead to where this can go, we're always open to new proposals and ideas. So just keep an open mind and be ready for anything. We're out there in the universe, just exploring, and we're hoping to make this a really positive and impactful experience.
And there's this final remark, welcome, invitation. Governauts, pre-register for the research group. I'll share the link in the chat again. So here's where you can sign up. Token engineering, applied token engineering to governance questions. Yeah, thanks, James, for sharing. This will be a 3-month program to be kicked off later this year. Some more steps towards, okay, defining research questions, putting together mixed teams of token engineers and governance experts, political science, operational management theory. And yeah, then we are good to go, and we'll open up applications and you can take part as a community co-researcher. And again, we would love to have people from various backgrounds. And in the meantime, we'll have more events. This is our next event, September 10th, same time, Friday again. We'll talk about reward systems. Livy will provide an overview and we'll have a panel discussion. And Livy, do you want to say already some more words about this Common Stack working group?
Sure, yeah, briefly, just that it's, I think, very interesting topic now that many communities are finally getting some data inputs from the tools that we've been using for a while. So SourceCred, the Praise system, Coordinate, MetaCred, that it's more recent in the space, but we have this data to analyze and to look if we're going in the direction we want it to be going, and what are some like cultural and social questions, that even philosophical and ethical questions that are emerging from using reward systems, and some of many other things that we mentioned here today. So yeah, hope to see everyone there.
All right, I think that's it for today. Anything missing? Ground control, all good?
Was amazing.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. Hope to see you next time at our next event or in one of our channels. And we'll share the recording as well, and also the mirror board, the results. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Really incredible. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great one.
Be
Bye.
well, everyone.
Gracias.
This was fun.
Everyone. See you later.